Hello, my name is Isaac Christopher Lubogo. Welcome to today's wonderful topic. Today we're going to talk about Yowerinomics Tibuhaburwarisim and museveninomics dispensation, Kagutas' astute mastery of fundamental Ugandanized change. You will begin to ask yourself, what is this gentleman talking about Yowerinomics and Tibuhaburwarisim and museveninomics dispensation in terms of Kagutas' astute mastery of fundamental Ugandanized change? Listen, my friends, in the grand tapestry of leadership and societal evolution, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni's enduring role in Uganda beckons profound philosophical exploration, and therefore, in this abstract, I intend to introduce a contemplative journey escapulated by the title Yowerinomics Tibuhaburwarisim and museveninomics dispensation, Kagutas' astute mastery of fundamental Ugandanized change. So listen, within this discourse, the pursuit of transformation emerges as the foundational theme, transcending mere socio-economic shifts to probe the very essence of human aspiration. Yowerinomics serves as a guiding philosophy that reframes the relationship between governance and prosperity, inviting us to reconsider the dynamics of empowerment. And if you were to argue Tibuhaburwarism, it's unveiled as a resilient ethic, both as individual disposition and as a collective force that speaks to the profound tenacity innate to human spirit. Museveni's Uganda embodies this resiliency, sparking reflections on leadership interplay with the human drive to overcome adversity. If we're to argue museveninomics dispensation, it embodies an era where leadership and culture intermingle, reshaping values and societal identity. Through this lens, I will dissect the profound influence that leaders wield in shaping ethical landscapes and cultural tapestries. My friends, the dialectics of change are central to this inquiry in terms of examining the ceaseless interplay between aspirations and constraints, and as far as progress and resistance is concerned. So in Museveni's journey, we will unearth the intricate negotiations of leadership amidst the dialectical landscape. So ultimately, this philosophical exploration will extend beyond Uganda's borders, summoning us to ponder the quintessence of leadership and the timeless yearning of a brighter future. In my opinion, an aspiration that will reverberate in the footsteps of leaders who endeavor to orchestrate fundamental change. Listen, why did we choose the title Yowerinomics Tibuhaburwarisim and museveninomics dispensation, Kagutas' astute mastery of fundamental Ugandanized change? In my opinion, I would argue, as far as the synopsis is concerned, the following. Listen very attentively. The idea behind this dispensation is to provide a comprehensive exploration of His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni's transformative leadership in Uganda in terms of an exploration of the evocative title. I will try as much as possible in terms of this unique term to lay and escapulate to the intricate blend of economic, political, and social polities that have marked His Excellency's tenure, driving Uganda towards profound transformation. Listen, my friend, I'll start with a contextual background. I'll delve into historical challenges that have confronted Uganda prior to His Excellency Museveni's ascension to the presidency. This will highlight the turmoil, the instability, and the socio-economic struggles that characterize the nation and will set a stage for understanding Museveni's impactful reign. Listen, it is important that we heed and understand. And like the Holy Scripture says, give honor where it is due. So in my dispensation, I will analyze and argue that the core of our analysis follows in terms of a chronological trajectory, systematically unpacking the key elements of Yowerinomics, Tibuhaburwarisim, and the museveninomics dispensation. And I will assess His Excellency's economic policies supported by empirical data, which will demonstrate Uganda's commendable GDP growth, poverty reduction, and diversification efforts. Moreover, I will illustrate Museveni's pivotal role in regional diplomacy and peacekeeping, substantiated by concrete examples and data that underscore Uganda's contribution to regional stability and its emergence as a significant player on the global stage. Now, while acknowledging His Excellency Museveni's notable successes, I will not shy away from addressing the challenges and some of the shortcomings. I will meticulously examine issues related to political freedom, corruption, income inequality, and land disputes, buttressing these concerns with empirical evidence. Listen, in the latter seconds, I will try as much as possible to pivot towards constructive recommendations for addressing these challenges, emphasizing inclusivity, good governance, and sustainable development as far as practice is concerned, and also outline potential pathways to secure Uganda's future prosperity and equitable growth. So, get ready, my friends. So, even as we argue Yowerinomics or Tibuhaburwarisim and argue museveninomics dispensation, my intention, as I said, is to provide a comprehensive and nuanced explanation of His Excellency's leadership, rooted deep in as far as analyzing, in as far as commitment, in as far as shedding light on both the accomplishments and on ongoing challenges faced by Uganda. And under his stewardship, I will invite critical discourse in terms of past, present, and the future of Uganda. I will try as much as possible to foster an informed discussion on the nation's development and governance. Listen, I will also try as much as possible, again, to emphasize, to delve into this highly philosophical perspective inspired by His Excellency, the great Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, who said, listen, this is not a mere change of arms. This is a fundamental change. So, in this quest for what I would want to argue as a transformative leadership, as far as this philosophical reflection on Museveni's Uganda, I would argue the following. I'll start by saying, again, that in the tapestry of human history, leaders emerge who actually etch their narratives upon the collective conscience of nations. In my opinion, but I also believe in the majority of people's opinion, His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni is an indelible figure in Uganda's story, illuminated by profound influence in terms of leadership, in terms of economics, and societal metamorphosis. My argument would be based on a phenomenon, and I will embark on this dissecting through the intricate lens of Yowerinomics, Tibuhaburwarisim, and museveninomics dispensation. Listen, in my dispensation of the argument, I want to argue at the beginning of the chapter in terms of understanding or defining what we call transformation. So listen, at the heart of this discourse, as I said, lies the quest for transformation, a recurring theme in as far as the human saga is concerned. So Museveni's Uganda stands as a canvas upon which the dynamics of societal evolution play out in vivid hues. So in this particular chapter, I will embark upon the exploration of what transformation truly entails and why it is an enduring aspiration as far as humanity is concerned. In my argument of my second chapter, that I will argue in as far as Yowerinomics is concerned, I will argue it in terms of a philosophy of development, in terms of the term Yowerinomics, which transcends mere economic policy I will argue that it is a philosophy that shapes destinies. It questions the very essence of governments and economics and how they converge to orchestrate the symphony of a nation's prosperity. Through Yowerinomics, Museveni's Uganda seeks to reimagine the relationship between state and citizen, offering a nuanced perspective in as far as socioeconomic empowerment is concerned. In as far as my chapter 3, I'll argue Tibuhaburwarisim in as far as the resilience ethics is concerned. Tibuhaburwarisim emerges as a beacon of resilience, a quality inherent in both individuals and nations. Drawing inspiration from the concept of Tibuhaburwarisim, Museveni's leadership underscores the significance and determination and the steadfastness in the face of adversity. It prompts what they call profound questions about the interplay between leadership and the human spirit. Listen, my friends, in my 4th chapter, I would argue museveninomics dispensation shaping societal values. So listen, the term museveninomics dispensation will invoke the notion of a transformative era, one that wields the power to recalibrate societal values. Through this lens, I will scrutinize the influence of leadership on cultural ethics and the very fabric of the nation's identity. And in as far as chapter 5 will be concerned, I will argue the dialectics of change. And I will say that at the heart of this philosophical inquiry lies the dialectics of change, the ceaseless interplay of progress and resistance, ideas and realities. In my argument, His Excellency Museveni's journey offers a crucible for contemplating how leadership navigates this dialectical landscape, negotiating between aspirations and constraints. And as far as my discourse will be concerned, the argument that I will try to propound will be in the sense that in this crucible of Uganda's history, in my opinion, and I believe the opinion of many people, His Excellency Museveni emerges as a steward of change, a wielding as far as philosophical forces is concerned, as far as Yowerinomics is concerned, Tibuhaburwarisim is concerned, and museveninomics dispensation. His leadership invites us to ponder the very depth of transformation, resilience, and values in the tapestry of a nation's evolution. Listen, in the end, my discourse will transcend Uganda's borders, beckoning us to question the essence of leadership itself and the timeless yearning of better tomorrow, a yearning that echoes in the footsteps of leaders who strive to orchestrate what we term a fundamental change. In my opinion, His Excellency has lived true to the very meaning of the word. This is not a mere change of guards, but a fundamental change in our country. And I'm going to argue for you, ladies and gentlemen, some key highlights of His Excellency Yoweri Kagutas Museveni's regime in Uganda. So, I'll start with the argument of what happened. Listen, issue number 1, seizing power in 1986. His Excellency assumed the presidency after a successful rebellion, or call it a rebellion. His government inherited a war-torn country with significant security challenges. And as far as issue number 2, led to stabilization of the country. And this happened precisely between 1986 to 1990. Museveni's early years were marked by efforts to restore stability. He implemented a policy of what they call demobilization and disarmament and began to rebuild Uganda's institution. Number 3, as far as what we call economic reforms, especially in the 1990s. In the 1990s, His Excellency introduced economic liberalization policies, including privatization and market-oriented reforms, which led to a significant economic growth. Then we argue issue number 4, as far as health and education is concerned, and this precisely between 2000 year and beyond. Museveni's government basically focused on improving healthcare and the educational system. Uganda made progress reducing HIV/AIDS prevalence and even increasing access to primary education. And then I'll argue issue number 5 in as far as the northern Uganda conflict between the 1980s and the 2000s. Now, the government basically faced a prolonged conflict with the Lord Resistance Army, the LRR, in northern Uganda, which basically posed a significant challenge to security and even humanitarian efforts. But thank His Excellency, many of those were solved. Now, I'll also argue another issue as far as peace negotiation, especially in the 2000s and beyond. In as far as that was concerned, there were significant efforts to end the conflicts that included negotiations and even amnesty programs for LRA fighters, which eventually led to a decline in violence. Listen, this is Isaac Christopher Lubogo. I would like to continue to argue as far as what we're concerned, but listen, even as we continue, I would also want to make a dispensation as far as the infrastructure. Let's argue something to do with the infrastructure. If I'm to talk about the infrastructure development, beginning from 2000 to 2010, the government invested in infrastructure projects, including roads and emergency, to support economic growth and development. That is something that we cannot take away. And then if we argue what we call controversial elections, some people argue them in terms of what we call controversial elections. In my opinion, His Excellency is President, in spite of the fact that it faced a lot of criticism for alleged electoral irregularities, the argument is that we're not fundamental enough to go to the root of the problem. And we can argue for a fact that the people definitely overwhelmingly voted him into office. I would also argue in as far as social services and poverty reduction was concerned. Poverty reduction and social services remained a priority, with the government implementing programs like universal primary education and universal secondary education. We have seen it on a massive scale in as far as this country is concerned. We will not take away that there are challenges. We will not argue away that there are shortcomings. But like I said, it is better to call a spade and not a big spoon. Then we can argue as far as what we call constitutional amendments, in terms of the different amendments, such as the removal of presidential term limits, that sparked quite a lot of debate. But in spite of that, the intentions were overwhelming, in a sense that it appears that the majority of people would agree that we have a good, gifted individual who is competent enough to lead us to a brighter tomorrow. In terms of COVID-19 response, Museveni's government faced challenges as far as managing COVID-19 pandemic, implementing measures to contain this deadly virus. And we can argue that that was ably handled by His Excellency. Now, there are some key events and policy areas that have defined His Excellency's presidency over the years. And we can argue that his leadership has actually seen both an accomplishment and some kind of controversies that have shaped the nation's trajectory. So I'm going to argue some little additional developments and challenges during His Excellency's presidency. I'll begin with some substantive challenges as far as land conflicts were concerned. If you're to argue land conflicts, particularly between the 2000s and 2020s, land disputes often offered, related to land grabbers and inadequate land tenure systems that remain contentious issues in Uganda. Although it has been on record that several times His Excellency has come out to defend the ordinary people so that they are not chased away from the land, which I think, in my opinion, is a fundamental change, in spite of a little bit of challenges. And then aspects of regional involvement, especially from the 1990s to the 1920s. Museveni's government has actually played an active role in regional conflicts, such as participating in peacekeeping missions and even supporting rebel groups that would ultimately, give some kind of peace. The likes of Rwanda, we cannot argue that. We've seen what His Excellency Kagame has done for the country in Rwanda. I believe that's an extension of good leadership from His Excellency. And then the fight of corruption. Corruption has been persistent in Uganda. We have no doubt that, but we have seen His Excellency on record and coming up with substantive laws and a whole court that actually can be able to capture and fight corruption in that arena. And we're not saying we're clean, but we're saying that those are some substantive, significant efforts that have been procured by His Excellency. You could argue in terms of human rights throughout. Museveni's presidency faced some allegations as far as human rights abuses are concerned, but there's been serious crackdown in terms of restrictions on human rights abuses, and we have to give it to him when it also comes to that. And when we will make a comparison with other governments, for example, so you get the better picture. In terms of youth unemployment, yes, there has been quite a little unemployment, but it is reducing, and there's quite substantive packages that have been given to the youth to equip them, to help them have survival, and that is something, again, we cannot take away from him. In terms of environmental conservation, we cannot argue that less. We have to agree that His Excellency has been at the forefront in terms of fighting, protecting the environment, and so that Uganda can continue being a beacon of what they call the Pearl of Africa, and we cannot take that away from his leadership. We can also argue in terms of international relations. Uganda has maintained good diplomatic relationships with various countries and organizations, and we cannot rule that away, in spite of some challenges with some particular countries, but we all know where that comes from. Even though it has to do with the IMF, we all know where that comes from. And if you look at the bigger picture, you'll understand that the heart of His Excellency has been at the core of fighting for the interest of this country. So it is important, my friends, to note that in spite of different opinions, the opinions about His Excellency may vary widely, but we have to agree that there has been significant economic growth, stability, in spite of the critics that may have some arguments that they may propound in that context. But I'm also going to give you some empirical data to support some of the successes that have actually been enjoyed during the reign of His Excellency Yoweri Kagutas presidency. I'll begin with economic growth, for example. It is argued that Uganda's GDP growth has actually been relatively strong during His Excellency's tenure. For example, it's argued that in the 1990s up to the 2000s, the country experienced an annual GDP growth rate of around 5% to about 10%. We could argue another substantial fundamental good that His Excellency has proposed as far as education and literacy is concerned. We could argue that the introduction of universal primary education, or UPE, in, for example, the late 90s has significantly increased primary school enrollment rates according to UNESCO. Uganda's net enrollment rate in primary education has actually increased from 53% in 1993 to over about 90% in the early 2000s. We cannot take that away from the good man. We can also argue as far as health improvements is concerned. Uganda has made progress in healthcare, including, as I said, reduction of HIV and AIDS prevalence. It's argued as far as UNAIDS that reported that there was a decline in HIV prevalence from 15% in the early 1990s to about 6.2 even as we speak right now. So we cannot take that away from the good leadership of His Excellency. We could also argue as far as infrastructure is concerned in terms of development. Infrastructure development, such as the construction and rehabilitation of roads, have actually significantly improved as far as our transportation is concerned, the connectivity within the country, and this has facilitated trade and economic growth. I mean, who doesn't know what His Excellency has done in as far as building, for example, the Northern Bypass and many other roads in the east, and the process is continuing. It's an ongoing process. We can also argue as far as peace efforts is concerned. Yeah. So while the conflicts with, for example, groups like Lord Resistance Army in the north have been greatly protracted, there have been substantive efforts to negotiate and even grant an amnesty to LRA fighters that have contributed to a decline in terms of violence and even eventual ceasefires. I know there are substantive challenges with ADF, but still we can also argue that there's a lot of progress in that direction. In terms, I cannot super over argue the argument of COVID-19. We all knew what happened. Uganda implemented measures such as lockdowns and mass testings, and it was important for us that there were no severe, although there were quite a number of deaths that happened in this country, but we can argue that with the resurrection of the likes of COVID-X from Professor Gwang, who were greatly encouraged and rooted for by His Excellency. I mean, all these were really offshoots of good governance. So the data that I try to argue here, creates that positive income or outcome in as far as what His Excellency has done, in spite of the fact that it could be certain challenges and controversies. But like I said, which country can you argue that has that perfection? I mean, even the best of the best countries whether it's America, whether it's the UK, whether it's Russia, whether it's China, we can also see some of these challenges. So we must understand that we cannot take this away from the good man. We have to argue and give and call a spade and not a big spoon. Listen, there has been significant reduction in poverty rates as well as far as this country is concerned. We will argue that, yes, you will argue and say not everyone is having food on their table, but if you compare that to what used to be the case, you can see that there was significant improvement in that perspective. So for example, according to the World Bank, Uganda's poverty rate has actually declined significantly over the years. For instance, between 2006 to 2017, the national poverty rate actually decreased from 31.1% to about 21.4%. We cannot take that away from the good man. Yeah. We could also argue in terms of increase in life expectancy. Life expectancy, for example, in Uganda has shown improvement, especially in the 1990s. The average life expectancy was around 47 years by about 2019. It has actually increased to approximately about 63 years, according to the World Bank. We cannot take that away from the good man. This is again an extension of good governance by the good man. We could also argue in terms of improved access to clean water and sanitation. Efforts to improve access, for example, to clean water and sanitation facilities have had a positive impact. You know, the percentage of population with access to clean water sources increased from 46% during the 1990s to about 73% in 2019, as per the World Bank data. We cannot take that away from, again, the good man. We could also argue in terms of what they call foreign direct investment, what they call FDI. Uganda has actually attracted foreign direct investment in various sectors, including energy, agriculture, telecommunication. FDI basically inflows have contributed to economic growth and job creation. We cannot take that away from the good man. We could also argue in terms of what we call gender equality progress. Uganda has actually made significant strides in promoting gender equality. Yeah? Gender Inequality Index, what they call the GII, showed a decreasing trend, indicating progress in reducing gender disparities in various aspects of our lives. And we cannot take that again away from the good man. We could also argue in terms of what they call improved infrastructure in energy sector. Yeah, investment in energy sector has led to increased access to electricity, and we can significantly have empirical data from the World Bank showing that the percentage of the population with access to electricity in Uganda has actually increased from 5% to 2000, that is in 2000, to about 20% in 2019. So we've seen that, and this is empirical, substantive, documented, evidential data that we cannot take away from the good man. So as I said, the data point basically highlights additional areas where Uganda has seen positive developments during His Excellency Museveni's presidency. So it is important, my friend, to acknowledge that challenges, as I said, and complexities do persist in Uganda's socio-economic and political landscape, and the assessment of his leadership basically is multifaceted, right? Now listen, I'm going to give you a little bit more empirical data to point in terms of support, in terms of the successes, again, that we as a country have enjoyed during the reign of His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. I will argue in terms of agricultural productivity, for example. Yes, you will argue and say, Brother Isaac, that's a little bit different. We have no coffee marketing board anymore, or cotton, whatever, ginaries anymore. But let's look at it this way. As far as Uganda's productivity is concerned, Uganda's agriculture sector has actually shown growth and diversification. For example, coffee production has increased significantly, with Uganda becoming one of Africa's leading coffee exporters. So we're not saying that, in spite of the fact that those organizations do not exist, but still the agriculture is continuing to take place at the roots. It's a question of us organizing ourselves, and I believe that is something that the country is doing. In terms of, for example, reduction in maternal and child mortality, there have been quite a number of efforts to improve healthcare that has contributed to a decline in maternal and child mortality rates. So the maternal rate ratio, for example, per 1,000 live birth has actually decreased from 687 in 1990 to about 375, as we talk about as far as the UN data is concerned. So we can't take that away from the good man. We could also argue in terms of increased internet access, for example. Internet penetration has actually expanded, with an increasing number of Ugandans gaining access to the internet and mobile communication services. fostering what they call connectivity and even digital opportunities. We cannot take that away from the good man. As I said, you listen and you say, wait a minute, Brother Isaac, how about the other side? Yes, there is the other side, but as I said, let's call a spade and not a big spoon. Give honor where it is due. As far as tourism is concerned, tourism growth, Uganda's tourism industry has actually grown with an increase in tourism arrivals and to destinations like national parks, contributing to revenue generation and even employment, in spite of a few challenges like the recent unfortunate events that happened. We know that those are challenges, but as I said, there's no perfect society. In as far as investment in education infrastructure, including the construction of schools and training institutions, has actually expanded and increased access to education and even improved educational outcomes. Again, we cannot take that away from the good man. We could also argue in terms of what they call steady population growth. Yeah, Uganda's population, for example, has grown steadily over the years, indicating overall stability and a potential in terms of labor for economic development. So again, we cannot take that away from the good man. Give honor where it is due. It's very, very important. So my friends, the issues that I'm trying to lay for you is essential to recognize as far as an assessment or an evaluation of His Excellency is term. And as I said, I have heard and seen many arguments on the other hand, perhaps because there are those who argue and said, listen, he's stayed long in power, but he stayed long and he has done quite well. We cannot take that away from him. And if we find that it's substantive enough for him to continue because we feel he's doing a good job, so be it. Because the alternatives are probably worse, if there are any alternatives anyway. You could argue, as again, I just made a point as far as foreign direct investment inflows. Yeah, FDI inflows in Uganda have actually shown growth over the years, indicating increased, for example, investor confidence. And I would argue that data from the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, reported a rising as far as FDI inflows are concerned, contributing to economic development. Yeah, we could argue as far as rural electrification is concerned, there has been significant efforts to expand in access to electricity, that have actually benefited rural areas. We could even cite that according to Uganda Bureau of Statistics, the percentage of rural households with access to electricity has actually increased from 1% in 1991 to about 10%. Yeah, right now it is even increasing. Yeah, if you're to argue in as far as improvement in business environment, Uganda has actually implemented reforms, to improve its business environment. Okay, and this has been even reflected in the World Bank as far as ease of doing business rankings is concerned, where the country has actually seen improvements in areas like starting a business and even getting credit. So again, we cannot take that away from the good man. Yeah, we could also argue in terms of increase in export diversification. Yeah, Uganda's export base has actually diversified beyond traditional products like coffee and tea. So non-traditional exports, including horticulture products and even manufactured goods, have actually grown, contributing to trade expansion. Again, my friends, we cannot take that away from the good man. As I said, give honor where it is due. Some of these discussions may not be very comfortable for everyone, but as I said, give honor where it is due. We could argue as far as investment in transportation infrastructure. We could argue that investment in transportation infrastructure, such as road construction and rehabilitation, have actually improved. Yeah, access to road markets. We have markets, substantive markets almost everywhere. Big markets, by the way. Yeah, and reduced transportation costs for certain businesses. We cannot take that away again from the good man. Yeah, we could argue as far as access to financial services. Yeah, it's also arguable that the percentage of adults with access to formal financial services, such as banking and even microfinance, has actually increased, promoting financial inclusion and even economic stability. My friends, we cannot take that away again from the good man. All this is substantially important. We could also argue as far as child immunization rates are concerned. Yeah, those of you who have lived a little bit longer, you know that almost all these things are substantively important as far as any nation is concerned. Child immunization rates, for example, Uganda has made progress in child rates with higher rates of child immunization coverage. Actually, UNICEF data indicates that immunization rates for diseases like measles have actually improved. Yeah, even the death of malaria, for example. So again, we cannot take this away from the good man. In spite of all that, we could also say that there's still substantive efforts that still require for our good man to continue doing his good job. So it is essential, as I say, to acknowledge that Uganda faces ongoing challenges related to governance, yes, a little bit of political freedoms, yes, social inequalities, yes, which are subject to debate and discussion. So I'm going to try to make a comparative discussion by analyzing His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta's successes with past Ugandan leaders since independence. And I would probably argue in terms of the unique historical and political contexts that each person was facing during their time of leadership. Yeah? And I'll try to compare that with His Excellency with support of some kind of empirical data where available. Yes? If I'm to argue, for example, the first president of this country, Sir Edward Mutesa II from 1963 to 1966. Yeah, Mutesa II served as the first president of Uganda. Yeah, after independence, his presidency was short-lived, yes, and marked by political turmoil, leading to his removal by Prime Minister Dr. Paul Museveni. When you compare Mutesa to Museveni's tenure, we could argue that he has been characterized by relative political stability and a more extended period term of office. So, as far as political stability is concerned, His Excellency has assured us in terms of that. Yes? If you argue in terms of internal body, from 1966 to 1971, and then from 1980 to 1985, Dr. Obote's first presidency was marred by obviously political repression and the suspension of the constitution, which actually contributed to instability and conflict. Yeah, in His Excellency's presidency, Museveni's presidency, we have seen longer periods of stability and economic growth in comparison to Obote's first term, for example. Yeah, and we cannot take that away from the good man. As I said, let's give honor where it is due. Let's argue His Excellency Idi Amin, yeah, from 1971 to 1979. Yeah, Idi Amin's regime was actually notorious for human rights abuses, right? It's argued that way in terms of political repression and economic mismanagement, leading to widespread suffering. If you make that comparison, as far as His Excellency Museveni is concerned, Museveni's leadership has actually been characterized by efforts to stabilize the country, rebuilding institutions, and improving economic conditions, which stand in contrast to what Idi Amin had during his time. We cannot again take that away from His Excellency. I know there are those who argue otherwise, but as I said, give honor where it is what? Where it is due. If we argue Dr. Obote's second presidency, 1980 to 1985, Obote's second term was actually marked by conflict, including the Ugandan Bush War, obviously, which His Excellency Museveni led as a rebel group. So Museveni's eventual victory in the Bush War allowed for a new era of governance and relative stability in the country. And we cannot again take that away from him. We all know what happened. Those of you who were alive during the times, we cannot take that away again from the good man. If you are to argue General Tito Okello, His Excellency General Tito Okello from 1985 to 1986, General Tito Okello's brief presidency followed the overthrow of Obote's second term and was actually characterized by political instability and conflict. And His Excellency Museveni's leadership brought an end to this period of instability through the establishment of a stable government. Listen, we cannot take that away from the good man. Okay, now the argument in terms of comparing these past leaders to His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni's presidency, Museveni, in my opinion, has actually been able to achieve a more extended period of relative political stability, economic growth, and improved social indicators. So there's no doubt empirical data, as I said, as mentioned, has substantive support to support everything that I'm saying as far as economic growth is concerned, as far as education is concerned, as far as healthcare is concerned, as far as infrastructure during the term of the good man. Now, however, it's important to note that His Excellency's presidency has also faced quite a number of challenges and criticism related to political freedoms, for example, governance, and even corruption. So this comparative analysis reflects that despite these challenges, Uganda has actually experienced a more extended period of stability and development under His Excellency compared to the so-called tumultuous past leadership. So we must comprehend that, and we must understand that, again, we cannot take that away from the good man. The argument is, he that deserves honor should be given the honor. So let me continue by still making a more substantive comparative analysis, yeah, in terms of the successes. If I were to argue, for example, as far as His Excellency Paul Mwanga, yeah, chairman perhaps, yeah, 1985, Paul Mwanga briefly served as president of Uganda after the overthrow of Obote's second term, but faced a challenging political environment, yeah, and it's argued that Museveni leadership, which basically followed Mwanga's brief tenure, brought a greater stability and governance and continuity. So again, we cannot take that away from the good man. Yes? If I were to argue, for example, again, in terms of emphasis, if I'm to remember the likes of General Tito or Lutua Okello, I know I made that point earlier, but for purposes of emphasis, his emphasis, his presidency faced internal divisions and external pressures, leading to instability and the eventual, overtake by His Excellency's forces. Yeah, and it's argued that Museveni's successful leadership in establishing a stable government marked the departure from Okello's, what you call tumultuous period. So again, we cannot take that away from the good man. Yeah, and whether you bring in Dr. Apollo Milton Obote in terms of the two presidencies, whether you bring in any other person who comes, it's important for us to comprehend that, yes, this is a gentleman who has come and who has been able to do significantly. And I greatly understand when he says that, when I stand before the Lord, God of the universe, I'll say I did everything for Uganda. We may deny the truth. We may try to create excuses. We may point out, we may critique, and it's important. And His Excellency is a good listener. Many times he's very, very careful when he listens to people who critique. If he sees something good, he takes it on. That is something good of a leader. He doesn't simply brush it off. And that's something that we're saying. I'm not sure whether many of our past leaders would have the opportunity to be critiqued constructively or even unconstructively, or to have that listening ear, or to be able to stabilize the country for that long period of time. Yeah, those of us who have lived a little bit before, or who know a little bit of history, you would understand the things that I'm talking about. So the argument is to understand that in spite of the criticism and the challenges that are related to serious issues, yes, political freedoms, yes, governance, yes, corruption, yes, as I said, these are continuous fights that His Excellency, in my opinion, with evidence, is rightly trying to develop or to work on. There's no doubt about that. But so the point I'm trying to say is that we cannot deny that. You see, it's, for me, I could stand here and make a lot of noise about how terrible the guy is, but because I want to make news, but that's not helpful. That's why I'm saying, let's call a spade, not a big spoon. So in terms of determining perhaps who, in my opinion, become a big leader in terms of actions or ranking, I would want to make a subjective debate in terms of giving various factors and perspectives, okay? And as I said, highlighting some of His Excellency's fundamental success during his presidency in terms of providing a general ranking based on the significance, yeah, of the context of Uganda's historical challenges and potential opportunities. I'm not sure that any one of us given the opportunity to lead that long will probably do as good as what he has done. And that's the point I'm trying to say. I don't want to argue and say see more gains. I want to argue and say, while he's here, it is important for us to recognize that. Let's rank him, right? Stability and conflict resolution. I would give him 9 out of 10. Museveni's ability to stabilize Uganda after years of conflict and civil unrest is one of the most significant achievements. This has contributed to an environment where development could actually take place. We cannot take that away from him, right? Let's argue in terms of economic growth. I would give him an 8 out of 10. Why is that so? Under Museveni's leadership, Uganda has experienced consistent economic growth, lifting many out of poverty and contributing to improved living standards. However, challenges, such as income inequality do persist, and I'm not saying that all are good, but as I said, let's call a spade a spade. Let's argue as far as education and healthcare is concerned. I would give him 7 out of 10. Why that? Initiatives, for example, like universal primary education and improvements in healthcare have actually expanded access to essential services. So while progress has been made, still I would argue that there are still challenges as far as quality and accessibility. And I'm sure we're moving in that good direction. Let's argue, for example, infrastructure development. I would argue that I would give him an 8 out of 10. Why? Because investment in infrastructure, including roads and energy, has improved in terms of connectivity and facilitated economic growth. This has been, critical to the country's development. Let's not take that away again from the good man. Yeah? I'm not biased. I'm trying to be realistic, calling a spade and a big spoon. Let's argue in terms of regional diplomacy. I would argue and probably rank him about 7 out of 10. Yeah? His Excellency's involvement in regional diplomacy and peace-speaking efforts has actually contributed to regional stability, positioning Uganda as a key player in East African politics, perhaps in as far as the world politics is concerned. Yeah? Let's argue in terms of maybe HIV/AIDS response. I would give him probably 10 out of 10. Yeah? Because Uganda's efforts in addressing HIV/AIDS as an epidemic and reducing its prevalence rates has actually been commendable to have saved countless of lives. We cannot take that away from the good man. Yeah? Let's argue as far as poverty reduction is concerned. I would give him 7 out of 10. Yeah? Why? Because while poverty reduction efforts have actually been substantial, okay, there are quite a number of challenges that remain in terms of addressing income inequality and ensuring, sustainable livelihoods for all our citizens. So that's something that is important for us to comprehend as well. Now, let's argue agricultural productivity. I would give him probably 7 out of 10. Yeah? Why? Because focusing on agriculture development has actually led to increased productivity and diversification. Yeah? However, more can actually be done to enhance, for example, food security and even rural development. Okay? I'm just trying to be as plain and as blunt as it is, without bias. Like I said, let's give honor where it is due. Let's argue as far as access to clean water and sanitation. I'll probably give him a 6 out of 10. Yeah? Why? In spite of the fact that the efforts to improve access to clean water and sanitation, which has been, quite significant, there are quite a number of disparities, especially in rural areas, and these challenges do still persist. And those are issues that we need to talk about. Yeah? Let's talk about political stability. I would argue in as far as 8 out of 10. Yeah? Because substantially we have seen significant political stability. Maintaining political stability has actually been a significant achievement, okay, in spite of the challenges that still relate as far as the bit of political freedoms and governance issues that remain and areas of concern in some particular whatever. Yeah? So, listen, the argument in terms of rankings are subjective, as I said, and they are simplified assessments. So the point here is to argue and try to address the effectiveness and the significance of these achievements. As I said, and these will definitely vary depending on individuals' perspective and the specific criteria used for evaluation. So additionally, I will also argue that it's essential, as I say, to acknowledge that His Excellency Museveni's leadership has actually faced criticism, and there's no doubt about that. No government, no leader, doesn't go without a criticism and challenge for that purpose. And that's something that you must understand that is important. Now, I would like also to continue arguing a little bit of some other things that have actually, come out during his tenure of office as we continue to make a case. If you are to argue in as far as foreign direct investment, for example, what they call FDI, I would give him maybe 7 out of 10. Why? Because His Excellency Museveni's ability to attract foreign direct investment in various sectors has actually been important for economic growth and job creation. However, ensuring that these investment benefits all segments of society remains a big challenge. And that's something I think that His Excellency needs to think about. Yeah? If I'm to argue in as far as gender equality and women's empowerment is concerned, I'll probably give him 9 out of 10. I think there's no leader who has actually pulled, women to the level they are today other than His Excellency. There have been substantive efforts to promote gender equality, as seen in the progress with increased representation of women, for example, in various sectors, and therefore, in spite of the gender disparities, we can argue that his government has substantially done a lot as far as access to education and employment opportunities as far as the girl child is concerned. We cannot take that away from him. If we're to argue as far as investment in in energy infrastructure, for example, I would give him probably an 8 out of 10. So investment in the energy sector has actually expanded access to electricity, which is crucial for industrialization and even economic development. Yes? And then if you're to argue in as far as rural development is concerned, I'll probably give him a 7 out of 10. Why? Because rural development initiatives have actually improved in terms of living conditions and in rural areas. But in spite of that, there are still some challenges in terms of infrastructure, in terms of access to services, and in terms of poverty reduction. These, we still see them existing. Yes? Now, if we're to argue in as far as investment in education, infrastructure particularly, I'll probably give him 8 out of 10. We have seen that, maybe 9 perhaps, because of the so much sprout of substantive education institutions. I know there are challenges. So the argument here is that investment in education infrastructure, including schools, universities, training institutions, has expanded in terms of access to education, improving literacy rates and even human capital development, which is extremely important. Yeah. In as far as access to financial services, I'll probably give him 8 out of 10 because there's been substantive improvement in terms of promotion of financial inclusion by increasing access to formal financial services that have contributed to economic stability and growth again. So you cannot take that away again from the good man. In as far as environmental conservation, for example, is concerned, I'll probably rank him with 9 out of 10. His Excellency has focused on environmental conservation, and substantive development has actually been important for preserving Uganda's natural resources and biodiversity. We cannot take that away from the good man again. In as far as arguing, for example, youth employment or unemployment, that has been a challenge. We have to call a spade, right? I'll probably give him a 7 out of 10. Yeah? Because I know he has done deliberate efforts to improve on the youth. Sometimes he's been let down by the people he sends. Yeah? So initiatives aimed at addressing the youth unemployment, for example, and providing opportunities for young people have shown progress. There's no doubt about that. But the argument is that more has to be done to harness the potential of Uganda's youthful population. Yeah? And that's, again, important for us to comprehend. I'm just making a case in terms of an argument for you so that you comprehend the works of the good man. So the rankings, as I said, will reflect significance of these successes within the context of Uganda's historical, remember that, within the context of Uganda's historical challenges and potential opportunities. So it's important to note that the rankings are, again, subjective and simplified, and to the essence of creating an effectiveness of creating an achievement in as far as the different various perspectives are concerned, taking into account the challenges, the criticisms that His Excellency's leadership has actually faced over a period of time. Yeah? So again, we cannot take that away from the good man. I'm not sure any other person given the opportunity would have done better, in my opinion, than what His Excellency has done. Let's just talk, for example, about regional integration. Yeah? I'll probably give him 9 out of 10. Yeah? Regional integration, I'll give him 9 out of 10. Uganda's active participation in regional integration initiatives such as the East African Community and the African Union has contributed to economic cooperation and regional stability. You cannot take that away from the good man again. Yeah? And then how about aspects in as far as a reduction in maternal and even child mortality? Yeah? I'll probably give him 9.5 out of 10 because he's done best. He's done well. Yeah? Efforts to improve healthcare services. Although we may not have healthcare area, but substantially, if you can argue in terms of protecting the maternal and child mortality, that's the argument. Yeah? There's been significant reduction in maternal and child mortality rates. Yeah, so progress has been made. We know there are challenges in healthcare, in infrastructure, in accessing the quality. That those do still persist, but we have to give honor where it is due, as I say. In as far as promotion of science and technology, I'll give this guy 10 out of 10. Yeah, His Excellency has done super well. If there's a story I've heard from day number 1, science promotion and technology, initiatives to promote science, technology, innovation in terms of potential to drive economic diversification and even knowledge-based industries. Although, as I said, there's still more investment and development still needed. We give it a spade, not a big spoon. Yeah? We give honor which is due. In as far as cultural preservation and tourism is concerned, I'll give the guy another 9 out of 10. There have been efforts to preserve Uganda's rich cultural heritage in terms of promoting tourism, in terms of potential to boost the country's culture and economic identity. and my apologies for calling the guy, but I'm in love with the fact that I see progress, and that's why I can, relate with him in terms of that context. But His Excellency, I cannot deny them that. In terms of diaspora engagement, I'll rank him 8, for example, out of 10. Uganda's diaspora has actually, had potential to harness resources, skills, and investment from abroad for the country's development. In terms of peacekeeping contributions, I'll give the honorable gentleman another 8 out of 10. Uganda's participation in international peacekeeping missions has actually bolstered its role in terms of global stage and even contributed to regional stability. Yeah, in as far as, for example, humanitarian assistance is concerned. Yeah, I'll give the honorable gentleman another 8 out of 10. Uganda's efforts to provide humanitarian assistance and refuge to displaced populations from neighboring countries have actually earned Uganda international recognition. Yeah, so listen, my point is, let's give honor where it is due. And I'm talking about things that are evident. These are things that everyone can see. And it's very important for us to have that good eye to see, to call a spade and not a big spoon. And you see, we're making this disposition in the context of what a good leader would have done, given the unique situation of what Uganda is, how Ugandans are, how we think and how we look at life. I said we cannot take this away from the honorable gentleman. We cannot deny him that. Let's call a spade and not a big spoon. Give honor where it is due. The Holy Scripture tells us so. We cannot take that away from the good man. He has done significantly well, in spite of the challenges. And I greatly understand why sometimes there has been what people would argue in terms of an overstay. But that overstay, look at it in terms of the context of what Uganda has gone through and the ability for Uganda to rescind or to go back to some of those situations. Given the fact that we may not even have substantive potential to overtake or take over. In terms of investment in agriculture, research and development, I'll grant him 7 out of 10, because I know that there is significant need in terms of agricultural research that is required for purposes of crop productivity and food security in the country. I would like to be honest on that. As far as social safety nets are concerned, I'll probably grant the guy or the honorable gentleman an 8 out of 10. The introduction of social safety nets as programs in terms of aiming at vulnerable populations to provide some support for those in need. Yeah. Of course, all this is based on the fact that our country is small, given the fact that we are donor dependent a number of times. But give honor which is due in terms of entrepreneurship and private sector growth. I'll grant the honorable gentleman 8 out of 10. Initiatives to promote entrepreneurship and foster private sector have actually, the potential to drive economic diversification and job creation. We can't take that away from the honorable gentleman. Yeah. In terms of youth empowerment, in terms of agriculture, that's the dicey one, not so, because the youth empowerment in terms of agriculture, many youth have not. I don't know why, but we'll give him 7 because there have been programs to engage young people in agriculture and agribusiness to help them address youth unemployment and contribute to food security. Perhaps the people that are designated to do some of these jobs have not done the job well. How about investment in information and communication technology? I would give the honorable gentleman a 9 out of 10. In terms of investment in information and communication technology, infrastructure that have potential to drive digital innovation and connectivity. Who doesn't know what's happening right now? You can take that away from the good man. Yeah. In as far as efforts to combat corruption, for example, His Excellency has been at the forefront. Oh man, he's fought in spite of the challenges. I would give the honorable gentleman 7 out of 10. Although Uganda, as I said, continues to face challenges related to corruption, in terms of combating corruption that have actually been initiated, albeit with mixed results. Give honor where it is due. It's important. How about investment in industrialization? I'll give the honorable gentleman an 8 out of 10. In terms of initiative to promote industrialization and value addition to Uganda's natural resources that can contribute to economic diversification. Yeah, it's important. It's important. I'm not hired to make a case for him. I'm just being pragmatic. I'm just being objective. It's important. How about promotion to access accessible legal services? I'll give the honorable gentleman another 9 out of 10 because there have been significant efforts to access legal services in terms of justice that can contribute to a more equitable society. We all know that. We all know that. How about inclusivity and cultural integration? I'll grant the honorable gentleman almost 10 out of 10, because we know that he has been at the forefront of almost the things. Yeah, his emphasis on inclusivity and cultural integration has actually the potential to foster national unity and even cohesion. We cannot take that away from the honorable gentleman. Yeah, so listen, even as we make a debate and try to understand the argument, we need to understand that we still have challenges, but it is important, as I said, I'll say it more and more and more, to call a spade and not a big spoon, and to give honor where it is due. In my opinion, His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, given the times, given the situation, given the uniqueness of this country, is a genius. In my opinion, he has done much more probably than any of you have ever done. I don't know what you may think about me, but I'm just being pragmatic and realistic. And I'm not saying that there are issues. I'm saying, yes, there are substantive issues, but please judge the honorable gentleman in relation to the context that we're talking about. Yeah? If you argue in terms of promotion of regional trade, for example, the honorable gentleman would probably get 9 out of 10. We've seen him several times. Yeah? Uganda's efforts to promote regional trade within the East African community and the common market of Eastern and Southern Africa, for example, the COMESA, has expanded in terms of export opportunities and community integration. Please contextualize when you're arguing, when you're debating, when you are judging the honorable gentleman in terms of performance. Contextualize your debate, and that's the point I'm trying to say. Yeah? And I'm not ruling out that there are no shortcomings. No, they are there. But let's call a spade and a big spoon. In terms of investment in renewable energy, for example, I would give the honorable gentleman 7 out of 10, because I know we're still on oil, but there are aspects of renewable energy that are coming into place. The idea of hydroelectricity, by the way, which has improved, but also I'm reliably informed that he's interested in things like hydrogen energy, for example, as another alternative. So these are propositions. How about in terms of promotion of cultural heritage? I would give him 10 out of 10. This gentleman has actually focused on preserving and promoting Uganda's cultural heritage, including our norms and traditions. Yeah, talk about signing the anti-homosexuality bill. I'll give the guy 11 out of 10. Good guy, not so. Call a spade, not a big spoon. How about in terms of peaceful transition to power? I'll grant the guy 8 out of 10, because Uganda has witnessed peaceful transitions of power through multiple elections, demonstrating a commitment to democratic processes and political stability. Why not 10 out of 10? Because we all know that, I mean, I would love giving him 10 out of 10, but I understand because of the culture that we come in that it's good change of power, given the fact that he also made that statement one time, the overstay of power is the African's problem. That's why not 10. How about investment in wildlife conservation? I'll give him 9 out of 10, because I've seen efforts to protect Uganda's rich biodiversity in terms of natural parks that have contributed to tourism and environmental conservation. Yeah? In terms of promotion, for example, for entrepreneurship skills, yeah? I would give him probably 10 out of 10, because I see that there have been substantive, deliberate initiatives to promote entrepreneurship skills, yeah, through vocational training that can help address unemployment and equip young people with practical skills. Yeah, and I'm saying contextualize, because I know the kind of society that we live in and the people that His Excellency has the opportunity to lead. I don't know if this guy has sleep, because I know it's quite a hassle. How about promotion of multilingual education or stuff like that? The argument of promoting multilingual education can actually help preserve cultural diversity and promote linguistic inclusivity. I'll probably give him a 6 out of 10, because we all know that it is dependent upon who is ruling PAP, who is the colonial master. How about participation in terms of international peacekeeping? I'll give the guy, the honorable gentleman, 9 out of 10. Uganda's active participation in terms of international peacekeeping missions has actually contributed to global peace and security while enhancing its diplomatic standing again. So please understand me. I'm not hired to make a case for His Excellency. I'm just being pragmatic and objective. And please understand when I use certain words like my guy, the idea is, I mean, I can associate and relate with him and understand the good things that given the kind of unique country that we are going, in my opinion, the honorable gentleman has done great work. And it's important, as I say, to call a spade and not a big spoon. And like the Holy Scripture says, to give honor where it is due. Yeah? In terms of investment, for example, in higher education, why would you deny the honorable gentleman 10 out of 10? in spite of the fact that there's huge challenges. But we know that with His Excellency's tenure of office, we've seen, I don't know how many universities we have in this country or higher education institutions for that purpose. So his government has actually expanded access to higher education, yeah, fostering human capital development and even research opportunities. So you cannot take that away from the honorable gentleman, yeah. How about in terms of promotion of national unity? Yeah, I would give the honorable gentleman another 8 out of 10, yeah, because there have been significant efforts to promote national unity and even reconciliation, promoting periods of conflict that have actually, contributed to a more cohesive and stable society. We cannot take that away from the honorable gentleman. Yeah. How about in terms of efforts in disease control? I'll give the honorable gentleman 9 out of 10. Uganda's response in terms of disease such as Ebola and other outbreaks have been effective in containing the spread and minimizing the impact on the public health. How about aspects in terms of promotion of agricultural export? I would give the honorable gentleman an 8 out of 10 because there have been substantive initiatives to promote agricultural exports, for example. Yeah, commodities like coffee, like I told you, tea, horticulture products, and even that have boosted foreign exchange in terms of earnings. Again, we cannot take that away from the good man. Yeah. In terms of strengthening the judiciary, I'll give the honorable gentleman another 9 out of 10. Who does not know that he has been at the forefront of really promoting the judiciary, even promoting independence of the judiciary? In terms, even today as we speak, there's been substantive evidence of some individuals who said, you're not going to resign, I still want you in spite of the challenges, even though you didn't really support me or whatever, but I still believe in you. So we have to understand that in spite of the challenges, still, we have to give him honor where it is due. Yeah. How about in terms of investment in youth empowerment centers, for example? I would give the honorable gentleman 7 out of 10. In terms of establishment of youth empowerment centers that has provided for skill training and support for youth entrepreneurship and job creation. There is a challenge, yes, but we're saying fair enough, it's fair for us to comprehend and appreciate and understand that in spite of those challenges, it is important to call a spade and not big spoon. How about if you add in terms of promotion of culture tourism? I will give the honorable gentleman a 9 out of 10. There have been quite good efforts in terms of promoting culture tourism, including heritage sites and cultural festivals that have potential to boost our tourism and revenue. Yeah? Like I said, you cannot take that away from the good man. Yes? How about in terms of efforts to improve internet connectivity? I'll give the guy 10 out of 10, I told you that. Yeah? Because we've seen investment in expanding internet connectivity in urban and even rural areas that have facilitated digital access and even economic opportunities. Oh, okay. So all these aspects, as I said, please understand them and contextualize them. Contextualize them in the sense of Uganda. When you're making substantive evaluations, evaluate them in the sense of Uganda, given the kind of country that we're living with, a country that has a multiplicity of different people from different backgrounds, from different understanding, different religions, different tribes. For a man to be able to come out with that kind of performance, in my opinion, as far as I'm grading this individual, I would be comfortable enough to say this is a summa cum laude. This is a guy who is sui generis, for lack of a better word. Yeah? Now, I may want to point out a few other fundamental successes as far as His Excellency Kaguta Museveni is concerned. For example, national infrastructure projects, for example. I would honestly argue that there has been investment in terms of large-scale infrastructure projects, such as the construction of as I said, the Entebbe Express Highway, the Karuma Dam, for example, that has improved transportation and even energy infrastructure. I wouldn't deny the honorable gentleman a good 9 out of 10 in as far as it's concerned. Yeah? In terms of promoting civic education, I would want to argue that his efforts to promote civic education and awareness have actually contributed to a more informed citizenry, yeah, and even political participation. I'll grant the honorable gentleman an 8 out of 10. I won't deny that out of that. I would understand that, yeah. In terms of efforts for disaster management, we know what the honorable gentleman has done. I wouldn't deny the honorable gentleman a good 9 out of 10 because in spite of the challenges, the disasters, we've seen him deliberately even creating a whole ministry to fight those aspects. So his argument has actually responded to natural disasters such as floods and landslides with efforts to mitigate their impact and provide relief to affected communities. So we cannot deny that from the honorable gentleman. Yeah. In as far as access, for example, to credit in terms of credit facilities or microfinance or bank facilities, we know that it's a question of moving. Although there are some challenges, yes, but now there's a change. I'll give him 7 out of 10. Why? Because in spite of the initiative to provide access to credit for small or medium-sized enterprises, supported by entrepreneurship and economic growth, there are still challenges because we've seen, although him as an individual, you could see his heart, that his intention is good, but sometimes I think the implementers have had issues, and but I know that it's much better than where we are, and there's significant progress and success in terms of promotion of energy on the role. As I said, I can't deny him that he has a 9 out of 10 because we were seeing substantive improvements in terms of the desire, the constant desire for him to, or even to appeal for people to engage in sustainable energy mix. Yeah, in terms of management of refugee crises, I wouldn't deny the honorable gentleman an 8 out of 10. There's been quite substantive response to hosting a number of refugees from neighboring countries, which is extremely commendable, providing humanitarian assistance and even settlement support. Yeah, in terms of promotion of what they call entrepreneurial ecosystems, I'll give the honorable gentleman another probably 10 out of 10, yeah, because there's been conducive environment for entrepreneurship and innovation that have actually encouraged business startups and technological advancement. We cannot take that away from the good man. That's the reason why, by the way, many people would rather prefer him, even at the point of, being extremely, advanced in age, but because he's able to guarantee that security because of these developments, yeah? So strengthening in terms of national defense, 10 out of 10. I mean, he's been a super general. There's no doubt about that. His leadership has focused on strengthening the country's national defense and security, contributing to our country's stability. We cannot deny that from the honorable gentleman. As far as diversification of export markets, that's a dicey one, but we give him 8 out of 10. He's given the circumstances again. Because you see, when you're judging and we're making that evaluation, you must understand it as a contextualize it in the essence of what Uganda is. It's easier for you to say, there's that saying that the best footballer is the one who is off the pitch, right? No, he would have done that. No, he would have done that. But if you are in the shoes, given it's not easy as you think it is. Investment in public health infrastructure, I'll give him an 8. I know that we still have challenges, but we appreciate that they're quite significant healthcare infrastructure, improved capacity to respond to public health emergencies that provide medical services. We cannot take that away from the honorable gentleman. Yeah, we have to agree that these highlights, in spite of the challenges, have helped Uganda as far as development, as far as governance, as far as leader, and this all goes because of the good leadership that we have in His Excellency. Yeah, I have no position in government, so I'm not a government spokesperson. I'm just making an academic and an intellectual argument in terms of the things that I've observed over a period of time. Yeah, as a citizen of this country, I look at them and make my substantive comprehension. So I'm not speaking on behalf of anyone. I'm just making substantive intellectual arguments. Yeah, yeah. So we could argue that His Excellency has actually stood out among the past leaders, even among any African leader for that purpose, and the potential is quite better and assertive in that sense. Yeah, and we have several reasons why we think we need this gentleman. In terms of longevity and political stability, he nails it. Yeah, his presidency has actually spanned several decades, yes, but has provided us with prolonged period of stability compared to previous leaders, and stability has allowed, as I said, sustainable economic growth and even development. And if you argue in terms of economic growth and even poverty reduction, we cannot take that away from the honorable gentleman again. We just can't take it away. Yeah, he's under his leadership, Uganda has actually experienced consistent economic growth, with the GDP per capita more than doubling from the early 90s to even where we are today. And we know that poverty rates have actually declined significantly during this period as well. We cannot take that away from the honorable gentleman. Things like AIDS that were a serious menace, although I'm told there's some of things are trying to come up, but we can argue that Uganda has responded quite well in terms of the AIDS epidemic, including the prevention and treatment program that has been widely recognized as successful. Yeah, the country actually saw a decline in HIV prevalence from around 15% in the early 90s to about 6.2. Yeah, so we cannot take that away from the honorable gentleman. And this again is a question of good leadership. Yeah, and in terms of regional diplomacy and peacekeeping, we could argue and say Museveni's active role, for example, in regional diplomacy, and peacekeeping efforts has actually contributed to regional stability. Uganda has actually been a key participant in various peacekeeping missions, enhancing its international standing. We cannot take that away from the honorable gentleman, whether we like it or not. As I said, we gotta call a spade, not a big spoon. Yeah. Now, infrastructure development. Who doesn't know what is happening? Investment in infrastructure, including roads, energy, and transportation. Yes, we have substantive challenges in town, especially in Kampala. Yeah, as far as roads is concerned, but you must understand the politics when you're dealing with such a institution. If there's the timing and the diplomacy and the politics especially that is involved. But we can argue that there's been improved connectivity within the country, facilitating trade and economic growth. In Kampala, because of the political challenge that sometimes some people have caused delays, but we cannot take away the good that has happened. Youth empowerment, the ability for the efforts to engage young people in education, skills, and training, has addressed in terms of unemployment, in terms of harnessing Uganda's youthful population. That's a good one. We've seen that significantly. Yeah, with programs like Bonabaga Gawale, with all those programs that have been happening. Yeah, and in terms of investment in healthcare and education, yeah, His Excellency's government has actually made significant influence towards healthcare and education, leading to improved access again in terms of outcomes to these critical sectors. Again, we cannot take that away from the honorable gentleman. Yeah, and we cannot stability, political stability and democratic transition. Uganda has experienced relatively peaceful transition to power through multiple elections, demonstrating a commitment to democratic processes. You can't take that away from the honorable gentleman. He has competed on the same platter, in spite of the fact that there are challenges. We cannot take that away from the honorable gentleman. Yeah? So while these successes again are notable, please understand that it's essential to acknowledge that His Excellency's presidency has also faced, as I said, challenges and controversies, including concerns related to political freedoms, yeah, to governance issues, yeah, to corruption. Corruption is the bigger one, yeah. So public opinion about his leadership basically will vary widely, and there are ongoing debates, as I said, about the balance between stability and political openness in Uganda, for example. Yeah. Furthermore, if the evaluation of leadership in terms of effectiveness becomes a complex issue, therefore it's important, as I said, to consider a range of perspectives and criteria. In my argument, Museveni's legacy in Uganda continues to evolve. That's something you must understand. And the future leaders will face the task of building upon these achievements while addressing the country's evolving challenges. That is something that you must understand. Yeah? So, in my opinion, His Excellency, his leadership in Uganda has also faced quite several shortcomings. Okay? So while these issues have actually improved over time, they continue to be subjects of concern. I'm going to give you some shortcomings, supported with empirical data, along with potential ways of how they could actually be addressed. I'm trying to now balance the boat, like they say, without being fair or unfair. Not fair, but without being unfair. Okay? Let's argue in terms of political freedoms and human rights. Yeah? You could argue as far as shortcomings. His Excellency Museveni's government has actually faced criticism for restrictions on political freedoms, including limitations on opposition activities and media censorship. We could argue that reports from organizations like Freedom House have actually noted declines in political and even civil liberties in Uganda. Yeah? And the argument here is that addressing the shortcomings in terms of this, his government could actually have a more fostered, a more inclusive, a more competitive political environment, allowing for a vibrant opposition and independent media. So this could actually involve, for example, revising laws and even regulating, or perhaps creating regulations that actually restrict political pluralism and freedom of expression, so that they're not so hard in that context. Yeah, because I would understand the offshoots of people who take it out of substantive good governance. Yeah. Then the issue of corruption. That's a biting one. Not so. Shortcoming. Corruption is a big shortcoming. Corruption remains a concern in Uganda, with reports of embezzlement and the misappropriation of public funds. We could argue as far as Uganda's ranking on Transparency International's corruption perception index has actually been a relative low, indicating high levels of perceived corruption. Yeah. So what would be my take on that? My take on that would be addressing the shortcoming. His Excellency's administration could actually have a stronger measure to combat corruption, such as enforcing what they call anti-corruption laws more rigorously, and enhancing transparency in government procurement, for example, and even strengthening oversight in institutions, so that we can be able to muzzle or to fight this guy called corruption. Not so, yeah. And then income inequality. That's another one. That's another one. Yeah, that I think His Excellency has to draw maximum attention to. Shortcoming, as a shortcoming, despite overall economic growth, income inequality has actually persisted in Uganda, with disparities between the urban and the rural populations. I have seen that. I walk around this country and I know. So we could argue, as far as empirical data, that the Gini coefficient, a measure of income inequality, has actually remained relatively high in Uganda, and that's something important to note. Yeah, and in terms of addressing the shortcoming, the argument would be policies should be aimed at reducing income inequality that could have actually been implemented. Yeah, including targeted social programs, for example, land reforms and investment in rural development, to ensure that the benefits of economic growth are more equitably distributed, in my opinion. Yeah. And then, if you're to argue in terms of another shortcoming, would be in terms of land disputes and conflicts, because it has been eminent in this country. We cannot leave it out. Yeah, it's a shortcoming in the sense that land disputes and conflict, particularly in rural areas, have actually been a persistent challenge, leading to social tensions. And the argument here is that land-related conflicts and displacement have actually been documented in various regions of Uganda. We've seen that happen on large scale. So the argument is that addressing the shortcomings, addressing land tenure issues through comprehensive land reforms, community-based conflict resolution mechanisms, for example, and even land tilting programs could actually help to mitigate some of these disputes. Yes, and so I'm just trying to make a case on the other side, so that I'm seen as being pragmatic and objective in the context of what I'm talking about. In terms of electoral irregularities and democratic processes, the shortcoming could be elections. Uganda have actually faced allegations of some irregularities and lack of what they call a level playing field for opposition candidates. Yeah, and it's arguably said that international observers and civil society organizations have actually raised concerns about certain electoral processes. And the argument again here is to perhaps create a neutral electoral process, perhaps not even one that is directly appointed by the president as an individual, but maybe a substantive body, neutral, in the sense that it's fair from the word go. So addressing the shortcomings and implementing electoral reforms to ensure transparency, fairness, and even accountability in the electoral processes would actually be very crucial. And this could actually involve strengthening the independence of the Electoral Commission and enhancing electoral laws to that effect. Yeah, and that's something super important as well. We could also look at it in the context of another shortcoming, in the context of youth unemployment, which is another one. It's another biting one. Youth unemployment. Yeah, shortcoming. Despite the efforts to address youth unemployment, it still remains a significant challenge in Uganda. Empirical data would argue that youth unemployment rates in Uganda have actually remained relatively high. Yeah, so addressing this particular shortcoming in terms of focusing on comprehensive youth employment programs, in terms of vocational training, which happens even in Europe. Vocational training, because then you give them the skills and they'll be able to do. And then entrepreneurship support could have actually been a more effective way in tackling some of these issues. And that's substantially important for you to comprehend, my brother and friend, Your Excellency. So the argument is addressing these shortcomings would actually require, as I said, a combination of policy reforms, institutional strengthening, and a commitment to democratic governance. So it is important to note that addressing these challenges is a complex and ongoing process, and the effectiveness of the solutions, in my opinion, may vary over time. So, but the argument is that while continuing to address the shortcomings, His Excellency, his leadership should actually pay even more and more attention to aspects to do with educational quality, for example. Yeah, in terms of quality, that's the point I'm trying to say. Yeah, shortcoming in the sense that while there has been an expansion of education access, concerns about the quality of education persists, including issues with the teacher absenteeism, for example, and inadequate infrastructure, and even payment. Yeah, let's not take that away. Payment for the teachers and give them the opportunity to even up their skills. Yeah, scholarship opportunity, for example. Reports, empirical data has reported highlighted challenges and further education sector is concerned, including low literacy rates in some areas. Yeah. So the argument is that addressing these shortcomings in terms of investing in teacher training, improving school infrastructure, for example, schools, most government schools are really doing it on their own. So revising the curriculum, for example, like we have done, that is some good light, but should align with modern skills and job market demands, so that we could have improved education quality on the overall. Yeah. And then the argument of health access in terms of rural areas as a shortcoming, we could argue that while there has been improvements in healthcare infrastructure and access, rural areas still face challenges and accessing quality healthcare services. So in terms of empirical data, disparities in healthcare accesses and outcomes between urban and rural areas have actually been documented, and therefore we need to address these. So addressing the shortcomings in terms of expanding healthcare facilities and services in undeserved and rural areas, if there's anything called undeserved anyway. But the point is, perhaps those that may not be as juicy as others, the point is we need to address and extend these healthcare services to as a question of distribution to all areas, so that we can improve access, in my opinion. And that, I know that's your heart, Your Excellency. I know that there's no doubt in my heart that you have that at heart. Yeah. And then environmental conservation and natural resource management. I know I gave a good ranking, but despite the efforts, we could argue that environmental conservation challenges related to deforestation, you cannot argue against that. Deforestation, land degradation, for example, and wildlife poaching still persist. Yeah, and a few issues of security, like we just saw. So reports have highlighted ongoing environmental degradation in certain regions. So addressing these by strengthening environmental protection measures or community-based conservative initiatives, and also sustainable land use in terms of planning, could actually have an effect in terms of addressing these challenges. Yeah. And then in as far as perhaps infrastructure maintenance as another shortcoming, you could argue and say that where there has been investment in infrastructure development, the maintenance of existing infrastructure has actually sometimes been inadequate, leading to deterioration. Empirical data actually reports in terms of deterioration in terms of roads, in terms of infrastructure, have actually been noted, especially in terms of roads. It's raining season now, and we know what's happening around Kampala. That's something, Your Excellency, that we must take hold of. So addressing, allocating sufficient resources for ongoing infrastructure maintenance, and even ensuring effective management of existing assets could actually have a mitigation on some of these issues. I think this is something, Your Excellency, we need to take hold of seriously. Yeah. And then the aspect of dependency on donor aid. I know that is a shortcoming, but I also know your strength, your resilience, your tenacity, your ability to say, wait a minute, I'm not going to bend if these guys are going to call to make us play on their tunes. Yeah. So Uganda has been dependent on donor for aid for significant portion in terms of our budget, which can limit the country's physical sovereignty. Yeah. So Uganda's reliance again on external funding in terms as a source definitely is well documented. But the argument is we have to focus on diversification and revenue generation strategy to reduce dependence on donor aid that could have actually enhanced fiscal stability. And I think you have been on the forefront on that, Your Excellency, in terms of doing that. I mean, I cannot take that away from you. I greatly admire you when it comes to that. You're a man of all men in terms of that context. Yeah. So addressing these additional shortcomings, my opinion would be would require, as I said, sustained commitment to policy reforms, increased investment in critical sectors, strengthening institutions to ensure effective implementation. So it's important to know that the complexities of governance and development challenges, as I said, are not easily solved. And addressing these issues is a question of an ongoing process that extends beyond leadership of any single individual. And that's what people fail to comprehend and understand. And that's why I'm making a case of understanding His Excellency within the context of Uganda as we know it today, as we understand it now. Yeah? If we're to argue, for example, in terms of ethnic and even regional tensions, which is also substantively another small problem as a shortcoming, ethnic and regional tensions have actually at times flared up Uganda, contributing to social divisions and conflicts. You remember what I argued in my book, demystifying the constitution, the executive constitutional mandate, in terms of what I argue in terms of the third Kabaka crisis, the Kayunga debacle, if you remember that. How about the conflicts, the infights in the Musoga Kingdom, for example, and even in the Mumbedes issues. So instances of ethnic and regional tensions have actually been documented, including even during elections, by the way. Yeah, and outrageous statements sometimes said by certain individuals about particular individuals. So addressing and encouraging inclusive governance that takes into account the interest of diverse ethnic and even regional groups, as well as promoting dialogue and reconciliation efforts, could have actually a good mitigation in terms of these tensions. And I know that Your Excellency, you are at the forefront of doing that. No doubt about that. I've seen that. I've demonstrated. I mean, but it's easy, as I said, for people to say, if you're not in the field, that I would have scored. But given the chance, I don't know if anybody could do better. In terms of access to water, clean water, and sanitation, as a shortcoming, we know there are improvements, but access to water, clean water, and sanitation services in especially some rural areas remain inadequate. Yeah, so disparities as far as clean water is concerned and sanitation do persist, particularly, as I said, in rural communities. So we need to address this. Expanding investment in water infrastructure and sanitation facilities in undeserved or underserved areas, promoting community-based water management could actually a lot of improved access. And the word is under-deserved, not undeserved. Under-deserved, in the sense that they have not yet got the opportunity, as it were. Then the aspect of urbanization challenges. Yeah, there have been rapid urbanization which has posed challenges such as overcrowding and inadequate housing, and strains on urban services and infrastructure. We could argue that urbanization trends in Uganda have actually led to urban planning, yes, and infrastructure challenges. But the point is addressing this shortcoming in terms of implementing effective urban planning. Smart city is the point of point, and then affordable housing programs, for example, for all the people, and then sustainable urban development strategies could actually have a mitigation on some of these challenges as well. And that's something super big, Your Excellency, that we need to talk about on a very serious note. Yeah, and then the aspect of land use planning and management is another one. We have to learn to plan wisely. Yeah, in Europe they do it wisely. They have systems. You just can't do anything at any time. So inefficient land use planning and management have led to issues like land grabbing, land conflicts, and improper land utilization. There's evidence that land-related disputes and conflicts have actually been reported in various parts of Uganda. And the argument is we need to address this by strengthening our land tenure systems, improving land governance, and even enhancing proper land use, which could have actually addressed some of these lacunas. That's something that must come in very strongly. Then another dicey one is the issue of media freedom, or what they call press freedom for that purpose. Concerns about media freedom and press freedom have risen due to incidents of censorship and harassment of journalists. But when you compare that to other regimes, you know that His Excellency is doing super well, but we are still being fair again, in the sense that we have to point it out. So there have been substantive challenges in as far as those issues are concerned. But the argument here is that protecting and promoting media freedom, ensuring the independence of the media, regulatory bodies, and facilitating diverse and pluralistic media landscape could actually have improved press freedom. That is something that we need to comprehend as well, and we need to work on, Your Excellency, because it's a super important aspect. So my point is that addressing these shortcomings would have required, again, a comprehensive and sustained effort to enact, as I said, policy reforms, strengthening institutions, fostering a culture of good governance. In my opinion, it's important to note that governance challenges, as I said, are multifaceted and require continuous attention and adaptation of evolving circumstances. Yeah. So there are areas where, for example, future leadership in Uganda can actually focus on making improvements to enhance the country's development and well-being. Yeah, and that is something perhaps the futures, or perhaps the leaders of tomorrow would like to ride and to build on, given the time, when the time is due. Yeah. There are also challenges in terms of some aspects that have to do with some political patronage in some cases, where political patronage and highly centralized system of governance have actually sometimes led to issues of favorism and concentration of power. We cannot take that away. Please understand that in good faith. Critics have actually pointed to instances of political patronage within Uganda's political system, for example. So the argument here is addressing these shortcomings, promoting political reforms, the decentralized power, for example, strengthening checks and balances, and enhancing transparency in government appointments could actually have a mitigation on some of these substantive challenges. I think I'm being fair now. Many of you thought I was making a case, one-sided case, but I'm just being fair on both ends. Yeah. In terms of quality of public services, for example, we could argue that while there has been improvement in terms of public service delivery, there are still challenges related to quality of services, including healthcare and education, and that remains a substantive discussion as well. Yeah. And the argument here is that reports have actually highlighted issues such as teacher absenteeism and healthcare infrastructure gaps, as I said, and how ghosts workers. You remember those sagas, but they have been reduced significantly when we appreciate and comprehend His Excellency for that. But the argument is that it's important to invest in training, in capacity building for public service providers, and enhancing monitoring and even evaluation mechanism, and also engaging communities in service delivery oversight that could have actually improved the quality of public services. We cannot take that away as a challenge. In terms of food security and agriculture challenge, agriculture, man, our country is 101% dependent on agriculture. Should be, actually. So despite the progress in agricultural productivity, Uganda still faces challenges related to food security, poor harvest losses, and climate change impacts, which are harnessable. You know, you probably have to listen to my YouTube, If I Was President, which I made some of those propositions and arguments in terms of the discourse. Look for that book, If I Was President, where we make those discourses. Find it at lubogo.org or sugenso.com, or even on our YouTube channel. The argument that instances of food shortages and vulnerability to climate-related events have actually been reported. So addressing these by implementing climate-resilient agriculture practices, improving storage and value addition in agriculture, especially value addition in agriculture, and enhancing farmer support programs could have addressed some of these challenges. And I think we can go there. We can do that. You could also argue in terms of gender inequality. I know I gave you a 10, probably 10 out of 10, but we still argue that there's still a challenge. As I said, because of the continuity of the kind of world we live in. So gender disparities in education, for example, employment and political representation may persist in Uganda in some little area. Gender gaps in various sectors, women's underrepresentation in decision-making roles have actually been documented. But as I said, we are just being fair to a criticism, but you have done super well. Everyone knows that. I cannot blame you on that. You know, so implementing policies and programs that provide for gender equality, including gender-responsive budgeting, for example, women's economic empowerment, and even increasing women's participation in policies, could actually narrow down some of these challenges again. And then the aspect of protection of minority rights, that's a dicey one, not so. That's a dicey one, Your Excellency, because especially if you understand minority in the context of what we all know. So the protection of minority rights, including those of marginalized ethnic and religious groups, has actually been a concern. But I know that you've done well there. The only issue is the other one, which everyone agrees with you anyway. in spite of that, you all know what I'm talking about. Even without mentioning a name, the argument of LGBT, yeah. According to our norms, even according to African Charter, even according to our laws, I think anything that's against the order of nature, in good sense and common sense, would not be encouraged as far as our country is concerned. And I think that's another super good one, where, as I said, you have 11 out of 10. So, as I said, addressing these shortcomings would actually have required, as I said, a multifaceted approach in terms of involving legal reforms, policy interventions, and community engagement. So, please understand that while no leadership is without challenges, these areas represent opportunity for future leaders of Uganda to work towards achieving more inclusive and equitable development. Yeah, deeply equitable, wonderful developments that we can do. So the argument here is that in terms of my dispensation, we could assure that the leadership and the ceaseless march of human societies, the enigma of Yoweri Kaguta Museveni's Uganda, unveils a profound philosophical tableau, in my opinion. And at the heart of our contemplative voyage escapulated by the enigmatic title of Yowerinomics Tibuhaburwarisim and museveninomics dispensation, Kagutas' astute mastery of fundamental Ugandanized change. In my opinion, lies a philosophical odyssey that transcends the boundaries of time and culture and place. So even though we may at times stand at the crossroads of transformation, my argument is that the very essence of change beckons us, and Museveni's Uganda offers a living testament to the human pursuit of what they call metamorphosis, a collective yearning etched in the annals of history. So the argument, as we uncover the profound yearning for a better tomorrow, a yearning that knows no geographical confines, but it is intrinsically woven into the human spirit, and that's something that we need to comprehend as a country. So my argument is that Yowerinomics basically emerges not only as a mere economic doctrine, but as a philosophical paradigm that challenges the boundaries of governance and even prosperity. It compels us to, reevaluate the dynamic of power and participation, daring us to actually reimagine socio-economic empowerment as an intricate dance between the state and its citizens. And in my opinion, if you're arguing in terms of Tibuhaburwarism, the argument here is that we find the embodiment of resiliency, a beacon of unwavering determination that transcends adversity. It's a reminder that within each individual and society, the tenacious human spirit endures, forging ahead despite the tempestuous storms that may arise. And if you are arguing it in terms of museveninomics dispensation, the argument in terms of museveninomics dispensation casts a spotlight on the profound interplay between leadership and cultural evolution, a testament to the transformative power of governance. And it prompts us to contemplate how leaders sculpt the values and the identities of nations, molding not just policies, but the very ethos of society. Yet in the midst of reflections, as I would argue and say that we encounter the dialects of change and the perpetual ebb and flow of ideas and realities. So in my opinion, in Museveni's Uganda, we witness the negotiation of progress amid the constraints of circumstance. So it is a reminder that that the path of transformation is not linear, but a complex interplay of forces, and that is something that we must take away. So in conclusion, my friends, my distinguished friends, I would like to argue that even as we navigate the labyrinth of Museveni's leadership, in terms of the philosophical dimensions, it unveils. We are invited to again transcend Uganda's borders, and we are called to question not only leadership but the very essence of human aspirations, as we say, the unceasing yearning for a brighter and more equitable future. So this profound journey, in my argument, we find that the pursuit of transformative leadership is a universal melody that resonates across time and space, a melody that finds its echo in the hearts of those who dare to embark on the noble quest of fundamental change. Not so. So again, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank you for agreeing to take this time to listen to my dispensation, to make this argument. So I would like to thank you once again. My name is Isaac Christopher Lubogo. God bless you. Find out things at lubogo.org and suegeneslawup.com.